Hi there, I'm Dahlia. And the day I got into Stanford was the same day my sister looked me in the eye and said, "You're not Stanford material anyway." My parents didn't argue. They just gave her a new camera and gave me a pen. That was the moment I realized, maybe they never saw me at all. But what kind of family celebrates your rejection louder than your success? Have you ever felt like the background character in your own home? Let me know in the comments. The envelope came on a Tuesday. It was thinner than I expected. No shiny foil, no special stamps. Just a plain white envelope with my name typed in bold letters. I opened it with steady hands and a heart that refused to settle. The words blurred for a second, then snapped into focus. Congratulations on your full admission to Stanford University. I didn't scream. I didn't even smile. I just stood in the kitchen, holding the letter like it was made of glass. My mother, Elaine, walked in with 2 mugs of tea. She glanced at the letter and handed me a small box wrapped in recycled brown paper. "Just a little something," she said. Inside was a pen. Slim, black, generic. Before I could say anything, Marla waltzed in like she owned the floor. She was still wearing makeup from her latest live stream, her voice already halfway into another anecdote as our father, Gerald, followed behind, carrying a large box. Marla tore into her gift, a brand new Canon DSLR camera still in the plastic. Elaine clapped her hands together. "She's starting her branding journey," she said proudly. Gerald chuckled. "Visibility matters these days. Your sister's building something public. Your tools are more internal." I nodded and swallowed. Dinner that night tasted like boiled silence. We sat around the table and I finally said it. I said the thing I had been waiting years to say. "I got in Stanford." Elaine smiled gently, the way someone does when a child shows them a crayon drawing. "That's lovely, honey. What about financial aid?" "It's pending," I said. "But it's a full ride, assuming—" Marla snorted. "Stanford? You'd last a week there." I blinked. Gerald laughed, not cruelly but casually. "You've always been practical. Stanford's pressure cooker territory." Elaine added, "That's not a bad thing. Some people thrive in structured environments. You're solid. Marla's electric." Marla leaned over the table, eyes sparkling. "Some people get the spotlight. Others hold the flashlight. Know your role." My fork froze mid-air. I didn't argue. I didn't slam my fists or storm out. I just sat there, letting it sink through me like cold rain through cotton. They'd decided my ceiling for me, and I wasn't going to talk them out of it. I looked down at my plate and forced myself to chew. The mashed potatoes tasted like paste. I counted the number of chews, 11. Then a sip of water. Then I blinked and smiled like someone watching an old joke being repeated. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed with the pen still in its box. Marla's camera bag sat beside her door, already branded with a logo sticker. I whispered into the dark, "And my mind doesn't need investment?" I didn't expect an answer. I opened my drawer and placed the Stanford letter next to a flash drive. On that drive was an audio file, from dinner. The whole thing, Marla's flashlight metaphor, Gerald's laugh, Elaine's gentle dismissal. I hadn't meant to record it. I was trying to test a feature on my phone earlier that day, and I forgot to stop it. But something in me had kept the file. I didn't know why. Not then. As I turned off the light, Marla laughed from across the hall, some half-drunk video still playing in her room. I rolled over, pulled the blanket up to my chin, and whispered to no one. Maybe I'm not Stanford material. Maybe I'm something harder to erase. The mantle had changed. Where there once had been an old photo of all 4 of us at Yellowstone, now there was a single, oversized frame, Marla, beaming, holding the new Canon camera in one hand, her other hand playfully tangled in her freshly curled hair. The lighting was studio perfect. It looked like an ad. I glanced around the living room. No sign of my Stanford letter. I checked the bookshelf, the mail tray, even behind the magnet-cluttered fridge. Nothing. Eventually, I found it, folded once, then again, crammed into a drawer with unpaid utility bills and a coupon for frozen lasagna. No one had said anything about framing it. No one had said anything at all. That's when I stopped expecting anyone to be proud out loud. I didn't bring it up. I just slid the letter back into my folder and placed it beside my laptop. Then I opened a new folder on my drive and named it Receipts. I scanned the letter, saved it twice, one to the cloud, one to a flash drive. In this house, if you wanted proof that something mattered, you had to create it yourself. The next day, I remembered something that made my stomach twist. A few months before, I had applied to a competitive summer STEM program. It was out of state, required a parent's signature, and had a deadline that I barely met. I had printed the form and left it on the counter. Gerald had picked it up, read the first few lines, and handed it back. No need to go that far. Stay close. Be smart. You don't need all that. 2 days later, Marla announced she was going to LA for an influencer boot camp. He signed her waiver without a second glance. Elaine helped her pack, took photos of her passport and suitcase, then posted, "Proud of our rising star. Let's go, baby girl." I watched her go. I watched the house quiet without her, and I watched my opportunity disappear like steam from a teacup, there, then gone. That summer, I stayed home and worked at the library. Marla came back with followers and contacts and words like branding strategy. I came back with late hours and calluses. One night over takeout, Elaine said, "You're the sensible one, Dahlia. That's why we trust you to adjust. You don't need the extras." She meant it as praise. She didn't see it as a leash. Marla's ideas didn't need proof. They needed support. Mine needed validation, feasibility, and permission. Always permission. That night I wrote my first journal entry. I titled it Stanford, Proof I Was Enough. The words felt awkward, but I needed them there. I needed something permanent in a house where my voice kept evaporating. A few days later, another scholarship opportunity arrived in my inbox. It required a signature again. This time, I didn't leave the form in my room. I placed it in the middle of the kitchen table, right beside the fruit bowl that held more dust than apples. Marla walked by and posed for a selfie near the window. The form was in her background. She didn't see it. Later, Gerald walked past, paused for a moment, read the title, and muttered, "Still thinking about this?" I didn't respond. But this time, I didn't move the form. Let it sit there like a quiet dare. I woke up early, the kind of early where the air still feels like it's thinking. I had planned to finish my financial aid packet before school, send off the last verification form, maybe even walk to the coffee shop near campus with my checklist finally clear. I flipped open my laptop. Nothing. The screen blinked once, white, then black. A faint whir, a flicker, and then it was gone. I tried again, held the power button, plugged and unplugged the charger. My reflection stared back at me from a dead screen. My hands started to sweat. I noticed something then. A small icon at the bottom of the monitor, faintly ghosted. A photo editing software I didn't install. I blinked once, then twice, and my stomach sank. Marla had borrowed my laptop the night before. She wanted to touch up a campaign post, said her own device was clogged with footage. When I knocked on her door to ask, she looked up from her mirror, applying lip gloss, and said, "Oops, must have overloaded it." No apology, not even a hint of concern, just a laugh and, "Back up your stuff next time, genius." I thought telling Elaine and Gerald might at least lead to acknowledgement. I was wrong. "Why didn't you have a backup drive?" my father asked, not unkindly, but in that way that placed the entire incident squarely in my lap. "You should have told her no if it mattered that much," Elaine added. Marla didn't know it was sensitive. Marla walked by with a smoothie in hand. "You're acting like I smashed it with a hammer." I stared at the floor. I didn't trust myself to speak. Because what would I have said? That months of essays, recommendation letters, FAFSA files and notes had vanished in a blink? That the one machine holding proof I was capable was now a brick? That night I walked 3 blocks to a local repair shop. The technician looked at the machine, tapped a few keys, opened it up. "Motherboard's fried. Files are gone unless you had cloud sync." I hadn't. I paid the $60 service fee with money I had earned shelving books at the library. He handed me back the dead machine with a receipt that felt like a death certificate. At dinner, no one asked how it went. I picked at my food. The table was quiet except for the sound of Marla's phone buzzing every few minutes. I went to my room and opened the drawer. Inside was a single printed copy of my Stanford essay. The rough draft, the only thing that hadn't lived on my hard drive. I held it to my chest, like it was air. I didn't cry, but I knew something had shifted, something that felt like thread snapping deep in my chest. No one noticed. The next morning, while spreading cream cheese on a bagel, Marla said, "Next time, lock your stuff, yeah?" She giggled. Elaine giggled too. I didn't respond, but in my head I was already gone. Next time I wouldn't just lock my things. Next time I'd take them with me. I walked into the house still smiling, not wide, just enough to feel it in my cheeks. My academic counselor had pulled me aside that morning, hand on my shoulder, voice warm. "You're a finalist for the National Women in STEM Scholarship. Only 5 in the state get it." I wanted to hold on to that feeling just a bit longer, but the house was already full of streamers. Elaine was frosting cupcakes. Gerald stood on a chair, hanging up a banner that read, "25K and counting," in glittery gold letters. I paused in the entryway. My fingers tightened around the envelope in my bag. Marla came down the stairs, blowing a kiss to her phone camera. "We're live in 3, 2, hey babes." Elaine kissed her on the forehead like it was instinct. Gerald beamed. "This is big," he said. "You're building something real." I placed the scholarship letter quietly on the kitchen counter. No one saw it. No one asked. No one noticed. I stayed to help with snacks, arranged cheese cubes, wiped the edge of the punch bowl, reset the plastic forks. I moved without sound, a ghost in my own home. Marla bounced from guest to guest, phone in hand, narrating everything like a show. She aimed the lens toward the back wall where I stood, refilling cups. "Someone's sulking in the corner," she said to the camera. "Guess you can't fake charisma." I froze. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. That night, after the guests left and the glitter settled, I opened Instagram. Marla had posted a story. It was a short clip of me, head slightly down, jaw clenched. The caption read, "Mood killer or just bitter?" Laughing emojis, fire icons, comments from strangers. "That's your sister? And she looks like a sad librarian, lol." No one defended me. The next morning I stayed home from school, claimed a stomachache. Truthfully, I couldn't bear the weight of my name being dragged behind Marla's spotlight. I wrote in my journal, "This house doesn't need a lock. It has me. No one breaks what they don't notice." For days, no one brought it up. Elaine offered me leftover cupcakes one night, sliding the container across the table like a bribe. "You didn't smile much that night," she said, as if I had ruined the party by breathing. Marla shrugged. "Don't take things so seriously. It was funny." I nodded, and crossed another line in my mind. There were no corners in this house left untouched, not by cameras, not by commentary. That evening, I opened my own Instagram account. It had sat dormant since I was 16, a blank profile, a username with no followers. I uploaded a photo of my scholarship letter, no filters, no caption tricks, just the words. No filter, just earned. I didn't check who liked it. I didn't care. I wasn't trying to be seen. I was reminding myself I existed. The city library wasn't grand. No marble floors, no towering shelves like in the movies. Just creaky carts, mismatched lamps, and the faint scent of old paper mixed with someone's forgotten tuna sandwich. But it was mine. It was the first thing I had earned that didn't come with strings or side-eyes. When they handed me the keys to the return cart and said, "We trust you to close up," I almost cried. That night, I told them. Elaine was setting the table. Gerald scrolled through his phone. I waited for a lull in the small talk about Marla's latest brand deal. "I got a job," I said, "at the library." Elaine looked up. "Well, it's better than nothing, I suppose." Marla came skipping in from the hallway. "Our girl's a librarian now," she announced, like it was the punchline of a joke. I smiled without smiling. The next morning, I found out she had taken a photo of me stacking books, without asking, and posted it to her story. Caption: "Some people settle for less. I aim higher." Comments poured in like flies to honey. "That's the sister you told us about? Is she like, okay?" Librarian chic, but make it tragic. I didn't cry. I took a screenshot and saved it in a folder named Archive Personal. That evening at dinner, I finally said it. "I'd like you to stop taking my photo without asking." Marla blinked. "It's just content, Dahlia. Don't be so sensitive." Gerald didn't look up from his plate. "Marla's building something real. You work part-time. Let it go. I didn't raise my voice. So am I said. Just because mine doesn't get likes doesn't mean it's not real. Elaine paused, fork halfway to her mouth. She didn't say anything. That silence said enough. That night, I didn't write in my journal. I wrote emails to scholarship boards, internships, study abroad coordinators. Every single opportunity I could find that put me as far from this kitchen table as possible. No more waiting, no more permission. The next afternoon, Marla walked into the room, camera in hand, ready for another behind-the-scenes moment of her real life. I didn't flinch. I looked at her, dead center, and said, "Point it at me again, and I'll post my own story. With the truth?" She froze. I saw it, that flicker. Not annoyance, not amusement, fear. For the first time, my words didn't bounce off the walls. They landed and stayed. It had been 6 months. Half a year since I stepped out of that house with my scholarship letter and a flash drive. Since I stopped waiting at the kitchen table for someone to ask how my day was. Since I erased their numbers from my favorites and deleted every text thread but one, the one that reminded me never to go back. No missed calls, no emails, no, "We're thinking of you." Silence had a weight I didn't expect. It settled on my shoulders in the quiet moments, between loading dishes and walking to the bus stop, between brushing my teeth and staring at my own face in the mirror. I thought silence would make the ache fade, but instead it fermented. It grew legs, teeth, and names. Late one night, while studying for finals, my phone buzzed. A number I hadn't blocked. I hesitated before opening it. Marla. "When I make it big, I'll pay you back. Think of the tuition as an investment." That winking emoji landed harder than anything she'd ever said out loud. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I took a screenshot, renamed the file Exhibit A, and then I blocked her. I deleted every number, mom, dad, even the landline I knew no one used anymore. That night, I wrote one email. Subject, parental signature waiver. I attached the screenshot and typed just one sentence. "This is why I need independence." My scholarship advisor replied the next morning, "I've seen worse. Let's get you what you need." I exhaled, maybe for the first time in months. A week later, I signed a lease on a small room behind a coffee shop. My new roommate didn't ask questions. She had a dog named Midnight and a quiet presence I didn't know I needed. I bought a secondhand desk at a yard sale and painted it lavender. I taped a note inside the top drawer. "No one else opens this." It wasn't about the desk. It was about finally having a boundary no one else could pretend not to see. There were no more family dinners. No more comments dressed as compliments. No more whispered comparisons that sounded like praise. Just me. And quiet. But this time, the quiet was mine. Before bed, I opened my laptop and drafted one final message. To Elaine and Gerald. Subject. You don't have to worry. Body. You won't hear from me again. That's not a threat. It's a promise. Thank you for the silence. It taught me how to speak. I hovered for a second, then hit send. I didn't check for a reply, because I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't looking for them. I wasn't scrolling for memories or stalking for updates. I was just bored. The kind of boredom that creeps in between laundry loads and late emails. And yet, there it was. On my feed, in full color. Elaine, standing at LAX with Marla, both smiling like a toothpaste ad. Marla wore a two-piece pantsuit, and Elaine's caption read, "So proud of our trailblazer. She was always meant for more." I read it 3 times. Not our daughters. Not both girls. Just Marla, always meant for more. There it was again. The rewrite. The quiet erasure of me. I closed the app and opened my laptop. Inside a folder labeled Undeniable, I had everything. Screenshots, scanned letters, bank statements, and one audio file. The dinner recording. I hadn't listened to it in years. Marla's voice came through first. Clear, young, sharp. "You're not Stanford material anyway." Then Gerald's low laugh. Elaine's silence. My voice came last. Quiet. I got in. I listened to it twice, once as the girl who lived it, once as the woman who wouldn't anymore. And then I uploaded it. Private link, no tags, no caption, just a title. What they sound like when no one's watching. I sent it to my scholarship advisor. She replied in less than an hour. You're stronger than most students I've met. Let me know what you need. I wrote back. Not strength, just finally not ashamed. Then I opened another document. Not a diary, not a letter, a contract. Title, Restitution Agreement. It had terms, dates, boundaries, conditions. If they ever came to ask for help, they would have to sign it. Clause 3 was my favorite. Financial assistance will be considered only upon receipt of acknowledgement of harm. I printed 3 copies, and then I waited. The knock came 2 days later. Soft, hesitant, still certain. I opened the door and found Marla standing there. Her makeup was heavier than usual, maybe to hide the cracks. She looked thinner, eyes tired, smile rehearsed. "We need to talk," she said. I stepped aside without a word, let her in. But I didn't smile, because this time I wasn't here to listen. I was here to negotiate. The phone rang just past 10 a.m. on a Sunday. I let it buzz 4 times before answering. I already knew who it was. Elaine's voice was brittle, the kind of soft that tries to sound casual but crumbles if you press too hard. "Hi, sweetheart. We need to talk. It's about the house, your father's business. Things have shifted." Shifted. It was the same word she used when we moved my bedroom furniture to make room for Marla's filming backdrop. Back then, I had nodded. Back then, I didn't have a say. Now I had terms. She told me Gerald's last investment tanked, that creditors were circling and the bank had sent letters, that Marla had been dropped by 3 sponsors and was facing legal threats from one for violating exclusivity. They didn't ask me to come home. They asked if I could help. We agreed to meet at a cafe halfway between where they lived and where I began living like someone they didn't know. Elaine wore her pearl earrings. Gerald looked like he hadn't slept. Marla was quiet, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it was a lifeline. "If you could just help us," Elaine said gently. "We'll make sure everyone knows how proud we are of you. You've become something so strong." Marla added, "We'll even post about it. You deserve the recognition." I stirred my tea. "So now I'm worth a paragraph? A caption?" They didn't respond. I pulled out a manila envelope and placed it on the table. "Restitution agreement," I said. Elaine blinked. Gerald shifted uncomfortably. Marla reached for her cup again. "There's no trick," I said. "Just structure. The same way you taught me contracts matter more than promises." Inside were 3 copies. Each one outlined a monthly repayment schedule, a signed public apology posted on all platforms, mandatory family therapy once a week for 6 months. And if one condition is broken, I added, the agreement voids. Elaine's hands trembled. Gerald looked like he might protest, then thought better of it. Marla bit her lip but nodded. "I didn't think you were serious," she said, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "That," I said quietly, "was your mistake." No yelling, no drama, just boundaries. Elaine reached into her bag and pulled out a pen. Blue plastic, cheap, but I knew it. Knew the curve of it, the click at the top. It was the same pen she gave me when I opened my Stanford letter, the one they never celebrated. "Let's sign it," she said. I took it, I clicked it, and for the first time, it made a sound that mattered. The front door opened with the same creak it had 5 years ago. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Elaine had called it a peace dinner. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I accepted. Not for them, for me. The house was quieter than I remembered. Not hushed, just still. The portrait of Marla that used to hang above the fireplace was gone. In its place was a plain frame, modest in size. Inside it was my Stanford acceptance letter. Pressed neatly, centered. No spotlight, no caption. But there. They didn't say anything about it. They didn't have to. We sat in the living room. Gerald offered tea. Elaine kept adjusting the silverware like she was waiting for permission to speak. There were no grand speeches, just silence that didn't hurt anymore. In the corner of the coffee table, next to a stack of organized therapy attendance sheets and signed payment logs, sat a pen. The pen. The same one I received the day they told me I wasn't built for Stanford. Marla picked it up gently, turning it between her fingers. I thought maybe it could finally write something that mattered. Gerald handed me a folder. Payment receipts, donation slips, a formal apology letter, typed, signed. Leona had monitored it all, quietly, fairly, like she always had. This wasn't redemption, this was accountability. Elaine spoke first. I've been volunteering at the community center, helping with scholarship forms. Her voice cracked. They remind me of you. Gerald looked tired in a different way, not defeated, just aware. I've been mentoring returning vets on finance. It's slow, but it helps. Marla's voice was the softest. I started writing, not sponsored stuff, just honest things. I call it the unfiltered version. I didn't know how much I'd been curating until I stopped. It wasn't perfection. It wasn't warmth, but it was different. After dinner, I stepped outside. Callum was waiting at the curb, coffee in hand, just like he promised. We walked in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because it was enough. Halfway home, my phone buzzed, a message from Leona. Proud of how you closed that loop. Now build your own story. I smiled. At home, I opened my drawer and found the pen again. It had run out of ink, but I kept it anyway. Not because I needed it to write, but because I needed to remember what it couldn't write back then. I stuck a note on my fridge. No signature, no fanfare, just a sentence. You're not Stanford material. You're your own material. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering and still choosing peace. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that being quiet doesn't make you weak. It just makes your power harder to detect. For years, I thought being the practical one meant I had to make myself smaller so others could shine. But healing isn't about shrinking or becoming louder. It's about knowing your worth, even if no one claps for it. You may never get the apology you deserve. You might never be framed on the wall. But you still get to decide how your story ends. So I'll ask you, have you ever been the forgotten one in your own family? What did you do with that silence? Did you let it define you? Or did you build something with it? If this story touched something in you, comment with a 1 inch or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. Let's talk about it. Let's connect. And if you want more stories like this, hit that subscribe button. This space is for you. The quiet ones, the late bloomers, the fighters who never got a spotlight but kept going anyway. You're not alone. And your voice, it matters more than you think.